Thank you. My name is Tomoko Tamari. I'm originally comes from Japan. And this is the last paper, so therefore I understand people are so exhausted, but just to put them with me a little bit more. And my academic background is sociology, so I think I am a sociologist, but I'm working on quite sort of a different sort of field of sociology sometimes. Rather than sort of also the sociology research, I'm working more media theory or science technology studies region. So therefore, I think my research topic quite relevant to this project. So today, I'm going to talk about human perception, which is a long time I'm really interested in, and always try to explore how human can see things, how we can reconstruct or construct reality. So this is sort of my long-term interest. And the title is Human Perception and Digital Information. Digital aesthetics and human perception, and affect in hand-drawn animation and computer-generated imagery. So affect is a key concept in this paper. Have you heard about this affect theory? Not really, okay. So I'm going to talk more detail in the paper later on in a bit, but just to give you an idea, affect is a kind of, you can feel it, but actually you can't articulate in languages. So something like beyond kind of languages, but actually people can feel it. This is kind of sort of not necessarily emotion, but more than like unconscious, conscious level. Okay, let's get to start. So in my talk, I'd like to consider potential implications of human perception in advanced digital information technology and discuss the expansion of digital computer technology and its integration with human life by analyzing the recursive dynamism of human perception and computer-generated imagery. So especially focusing on human perception of moving image by considering the role of affect, I've just explained, the affective sensory complex, which people simply feel, but it's really hard to articulate in languages. So to do this, I'd like to explain the differences between digital aesthetics created by computer animation and analog aesthetics, hand-drawing animation. So both are different ways to produce representation of realities. But traditional animation is usually drawn by hand, and set the final image cells under the camera, and shoot the whole sequence of frames. Well, digital computer generated imagery, there is no substance from the real world, rely on pixels and mathematical formulas for their existence. So all these processes are carried by within the computer. Okay. So, topic today, just to focus on, I just explained about pretty much complicated in some ways, but I'm trying to explain as much as I can. Right. So, Costas Tesediri, sorry, my Italian pronunciation is terrible maybe. I'm just quote, the expressive hand-drawn animation has many advantages over the realistic, and whereas the computer graphic quest for realism is essentially about completeness. So in this context, clearly the mention of advantage over the realistic does not mean hyperreality, superreality, or virtual reality. Rather, it closely associated with the human perception, how we see the moving image, what is constituted by complex dynamism of our human sensitivities. So despite the increasing development of GC technologies, there are still some difficulties in creating natural motion image or producing human body, which is very familiar. Everybody has a body, and common optical object. Everyone can see the body all the time. But there are individual and singular ones. Everyone doesn't have exactly the same body. So there are also always in motion, we are moving. Quote, the variations in the individual characters, such as walking style, can be considered an imperfection, since there are non-standard elements within computational system. In this system, the human body, therefore, can be identified as the absolute imperfection of living things. Hence, challenging of GCI today is still how to create organic feelings, since moving image things, moving living things, which are absolutely perfect in the real world for human perception, but imperfect in digital world space. If the hand-drawing animation is capable to create an advantage over the realistic, then we need to consider how it created. So here, Hayao Miyazaki, she's a Japanese animator, sort of globally well known. So Hayao Miyazaki animation is perfectly exemplified the future of hand-drawn moving images. Miyazaki insists, and animation should be deceptive means. In this sense, the world of animation is deception, but the human perception of animation is actual. To create the deception, Miyazaki further emphasized the significance of animators' body feelings, which help us to make sense of the world. Hence, the sense created by animators does not always make sense in terms of law of the nature or the real world. In the process, it is an important animator's capacity to be affected or embodied or subjectified to perceive. At the same time, they can create affective effect through externalized or objectified of things or animations they create. Miyazaki believes that bodily perceptual orientation is inevitable for understanding both the world we live and for drawing animation, moving images. So here it is useful to elaborate mechanism of body perceptual orientation in the field of neuroscience. I'm not a neuroscientist, but just try to sort of reference. So in the early 1990s, Giacomo Lazzaretti and his co-workers at the University of Parma discovered the mirror neuron, the famous. So, quote, they said, they responded not only when subject performed a given action, but also when the subject observed someone else performing the same action. This is a mirror neuron. So furthermore, most importantly, thanks to mirror neural system, we are able to immediately understand the intentions, expectations, and motivations of others without the need of any kind of reasoning. So emotions like action are immediately shared. So as Robinson also argued, affection, such as emotion, engage an initial first unconscious but close affective appraisal of the immediate environment involving low level of neural circuit, particularly the amygdala. Yeah, so thanks to the way mirror neurons act as the agents for sharing our perception, that we can share with the same or similar feeling, emotion, and bodily senses, Here we can understand mirror neurons attribute lead to affective emotional attunement. So the mirror neuron helps to appreciation of immediate intensive sensibilities, such as affect, between animators and audience through transsubjectivities. In this respect, animation became a medium or interface between the animator and the audience. So I'd like to affect defined like that. Here, affect can be referred as a communicative implication which arises in the initial stage of perception, that is unconstructed, non-conscious experience, and immediate intensive sensibilities which occur in the process of configuration of human perception in seeing, animation, moving image. So actually, part of the unconstructed, non-conscious experience is not my word. I borrowed from Mike Featherstone. So in the mirror neuron can help in sharing our perceptions, such as affective emotional attunement. This property of mirror neurons could equally influence our perception of both CGI and hand-drawn animation. To elaborate the human and machine perception, it could be useful to scrutinize potential mechanism or system of initial stage perception in relation to cognition. So since cognition is often defined as an act of knowing, which includes perception and judgment. So Catherine Hayles, she's an American media theorist, offered the notion of non-conscious cognition in the brain. So in this general accepted, it is generally accepted non-consciousness cognition starts to work fast before conscious activate. Hayles illustrated this process in more detail. So she said, non-conscious cognition has the ability to reduce the million of units of information and descending patterns so that conscious processing does not suffer an overwhelming overload of information from complex sensory stimuli in the surrounding environment. So these processes involve scanning, choosing, editing information, and therefore interpretation of meaning can be also possible. This process and role of non-consciousness also resonate with Gilbert Simondon technical mentality. So technical mentality always offers coherent and usable scheme of cognitive interpretation. It is coherent, positive, productive in domain of cognitive schemes, but it's often incomplete and in conflict with itself in the domain of affective categories, because it has not yet properly emerged. So in discussion of non-conscious cognition, the most significant point Hayles makes is that the structural and functional similarities can be found cognition in both biological organisms and technical systems, such as computational media. So for her, both biological organisms and technical systems are cognizers. For her, technical devices such as, I'm quote, medical diagnostic system, automated satellite imaginary identification, ship navigation system, weather prediction program, and a host of other non-conscious cognitive devices interpret ambiguous or conflicting information to arrive at conclusions that rarely, if ever, are completely certain. It's gone?
It should come back, hopefully.
Okay. So something of the kind also happened with cognitive non-conscious in humans. So really interesting what she pointed is, cognizer is not just only biological, but also computational system has cognitive process. So what I'd like to underline here is that human and technical cognitions share the same attributions: selecting, editing, interpreting of information, and connecting with them meanings. So all the information in the technical device, such as computers, is encoded as bits which are represented in the form of zeros as ones. This is the main digital operation which plays a unique and crucial role as a tool of abstraction, the digital chief technique, I quote Evans. So the abstraction of the bits of a universal language in the brain be represented by computable data? To consider this assumption, Hayles' understanding that of the computational brain could be useful. So she conceived that there is no scientific evidence to explain the brain manipulates symbols to accomplish the tasks. But she also emphasized the similarity of computational media and the biological organisms in their meaning-making formation through sign exchange processes. For computational media, operations are driven by sign, which are indexical rather than symbolic. The sign works to signify something to the cell, biological cell, in the biological organism too. This is why, in her view, bio-semiotics is useful, helpful. If affective responses can be created at the stage of non-conscious cognition, there can be process of meaning-making through its selection of interpretation of massive number of signs. But this selection is subjective orientation. As Hayles, biosemiotics originate with Jakob von Wickscoop's concept of Umwelt, which refer to all that subject perceives become his perceptual world. So we are living in the environment, pretty much subjective environment, subjectively framed. But hence, we can see that biosemiotics supports the subjective view of the concrete framework of a meaning-making process. This suggests that biosemiotics approach is fundamentally different from the logic of the digital. That biological meaning-making process cannot be represented by computational media, which seek for the greatest and the least difference. But the selection process in biosemiotics is not universal, but exclusively subjective orientation. The logic of digital and computational media must operate in its environment to fulfill their pre-programmed purpose. It is always programmed to make a decision which is an anticipation of the future consequences and achieve a result through communication with pre-given environment. This is because the logic of digital universal means it is never possible to fully encode affect, which is subjective, into signs. To recreate affective effect, the data set should be constituted by all the information which is abstracted through affect, through human perception in the real world, life world. It is, however, not possible to generate a full set of data in order to create affect as a result. If we do not have a completed set of the database of affect, it is thus impossible to recreate perfect or absolute human perception. Hence, we can now understand the affective effect is moving image, which are produced by the hand drawn of human animator, could produce different quality from the affective effect of computational generation, since the constitution of a given database and associated environments are different. Although the affect is not fully able to encode it by computational media, it is important not to forget that digital affective effects are always received by human perception, received by human being. Hence, if possible, if digital encoded affect, if it's possible, will be again decoded through human perception. Ramachandran explained human perception from a viewpoint of neuroscience. According to him, the neural activities and network in the brain have limited capacity. Therefore, they constantly select information of images for the restricted attentional resources. The brain multimodal neural activity are therefore selective. A neuroscientist, Stanislas Dehaene, French name. So he explained, when we perceive objects, our neural detect their contours, such in characteristic configurations, such as the shape T or F. T or F. So these fragments of shape are known as non-accidental properties. Can you see the page F and this sort of we called non-accidental properties in the visual science, visual scenes. So of course, there are many ways in which the edge meet. They are invariant, but key factor to determine object shape. So according to Dehaene, quote, our primate neural system seems to have discovered this invariant non-accidental property and used it to encode shapes. Hence, it seems that we do not need perfect or fully available information to reconstruct image of the object. So in this context, we need to address another interesting angle to better understand the human perception of images, which rich information and poor noise ratio. As Power explained, realistic imagery has a poor signal to noise ratio that can distract attention. Less is more. Less information, more noise enhance attention. Or more is less. More information and less noise is more distractive for attention. So this is because in the process of brain complex dynamic neural system, neuron networking activities can be more stimulated and activated by ambiguity. It can be said that noise which can induce imperfectness seems to be a more important factor to activating the complex dynamics neural system in the brain. But eventually, the creative ambiguity of information processing in the neuron system can enhance the viewer's imagination and meaning construction process. reminder of the Miyazaki's suggestion here, his suggestive statement about noise, or gap. In terms of the relationship between moving image and the human perception, what is fascinating is that Miyazaki assumes that percolation, the hole in either side of the film strip, could play a key role to produce a good quality of animation. This is because percolation is a cause of a blur, which is caused by the tiny unintentional gap of the film strip in projector. This microsecond is an absence of information, that is noise, which is supposed not to carry any meanings. But these tiny unintended gaps act an important factor in making animation lively. Therefore, he is suspicious about super high definition technology. This is because human perception does not tune well with super high definition technology, which are supposed to be almost perfect, accurate replication of the naturalistic vision. To grasp moving images, the human perception doesn't need to have much information. It also doesn't acquire moving image in machinery scientific way which capture the photographic real image in line with natural and physical law. Rather, Miyazaki emphasized that animators should be created through the human perception-oriented design and calculation, which is created by his embodied craftsmanship and tacit knowledge. So Miyazaki's skill and competence cannot be fully translated and transferred into computer database through algorithmic calculations. For Miyazaki, so creativity that depends on his own unique auto-affectives, so the auto-affectivity, and something that cannot be replaced by computer. For Miyazaki, maintaining the expanding embodied memory and tacit knowledge through actual and direct experience are indispensable for hand-drawn animation. For example, Miyazaki noted that young generation animators had little direct experience of seeing fireframes. They do not have a memory of real fireframes, since there is a less chance to see directly fireframes in contemporary urban society like Tokyo. Therefore, they may have not been able to capture the sense of subtle motion and rhythms of the fireframe through their own perception, through their own experience. This means that they can only know and produce virtual fireframe. So this also indicates that the younger animators' virtual experience, which are most likely to have been produced by computer algorithm, technical cognition, could well be incorporated into their tacit knowledge, which help them to construct an actuality. It's not necessarily real, but actuality, how we feel. So consequently, actuality they construct has already been mediated by technical and non-human perception. So Catherine Hayles remarks biological and technical cognition are now so deeply entwined that it is more accurate to say that interpenetrate one another. Hayles described these complex interactions between human, non-human cognizers, including all biological life forms and many technical systems as cognitive assemblage. She wrote, I quote, "Because humans and technical systems in cognitive assemblage are interconnected, the cognitive decision of each affect the other, with interaction occurring across the full range of human cognition." So in her view, we now live in a world which depends on the symbiotic relationship between human and technical systems. So given these systematic transformations that profoundly change planetary cognitive ecologies, the humans should endeavor to understand the implications. So my discussion has highlighted the way in which the human perception of moving image can be viewed as just one specific case in the vast array of cognitive assemblage. Now we have ChatGPT and most recently DeepSeek from China. So it generates human-like conversation responses based on analysis through large language models, which are massive trained data source. As we respond to ChatGPT or DeepSeek, within knowledge formation process, we would do well to remember that our experience with ChatGPT will be incorporated into our tacit knowledge. So reflexively means here is not just suggesting creating political cultural bias, more importantly, potentially problematic implication, changing our knowledge formation process. Here, we needed to urgently a new approach for theorizing recursive information flow to consider how we can reformulate our understanding of implication of knowledge formation in practice of advanced digital computational system. This is a sort of I don't have any answer, but I just want to raise a sort of question here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I won't pretend to understand everything that you said, but I was really interested in this idea of blur, and and also I think that the idea of cognitive assemblages is really interesting, and I think that's kind of referring to what I was trying to say in my presentation about rhizomatic connections and these kind of networks of creative authorship. But so getting back to the idea of blur, I was thinking when you were speaking about how that related to a lot of the discussion today about problematic materials in our work with robotic assisted paintings. And I guess I just wanted to ask you whether you had some of those thoughts while you were listening today, whether there were specific examples from the artistic projects in EACVA that you could speak about in relation to your paper.
Yes, but Greta, you talked sometimes, I cannot remember, but last year, on one of artists' report, you emailed to everyone talking about how in the process of developing, digital, computational drawing, robot drawing, it's kind of, it's very abstract. But you can sort of, how interesting to human perception to work with quite abstract. It's not perfect, but incompleteness. Still, we can sort of, using our imagination, using our experience, using our memories to reconstruct. So this is, I think, all about, I'm talking about something like, something like, there is no, I think, but in the real world, there is no perfection, I think, perhaps, if you think about it. But the human being, we are sort of working on, I think Julian also talked about, it's something like we, when we perceive object, what she said is something started with association. So I understand what she's saying is, my understanding is that association means associate with our experience, associate with our memory. Then we can understand something, to reconstruct. So I think art, is about, I think Patrick's, work, I think yesterday I talked with him, he using like a very humble school desk and very interesting sort of, not like a sophisticated, super sophisticated machine, but just enough to understand what works this is, I think he played with people's imagination. We are sort of immediately understand what things going on. And also maybe each individual subject, each individual people has exactly same things, same interpretations, of course. But that's why art is interesting, I think. Not always carrying same, message. I think interpretation is quite so diverse and flexible. So that's why I think art is really interesting media.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It resonated with so many of my own research and thoughts. I just have two comments. One on the idea of the assemblage of Hayles.
Yeah.
I think Hayles doesn't go far enough. It's a nice description. It's a very open description of the interaction of humans and machines. But what is happening when we are confronted with a technology that has, on the one hand side, the same structure as human cognition has. We have this active axis consciousness, and we have this non-conscious layer, which is the digestive part of the data. Same goes for the computer. But the computer basically is designed to engineer our non-conscious processes in the form of targeted marketing and so on. So that the way we are presented with data from the machine is trying to actively engineer what is happening in our non-conscious processes. And this is, I think, in a political problematic sense to reflect.
Yeah.
And I always wondered why these animations, Ghibli animations, are so fascinating in comparison to all this digital stuff now. I just want to add one concept to what you said. So we form our tacit knowledge going about our lives in an environment, you mentioned Imagery, and the affects that come from, that we are confronted with in this environment, how we are affected by it, they need affordances. We need affordances to get affected, to get into learning processes. And I think the concept of affordances
Gibson affordance.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly,
okay.
exactly. Because, and then I bring another idea into the game. So if you look at it from an image theory perspective, and we use this old theory of thought to describe how we look at images. Images always give us a certain materiality through which we are intend the image subject, through which we see the image subject.
Yeah.
And this is always a tension between the materiality and the image we then see presented through the materiality. And I think this kind of materiality is the affordance here. It needs to be interesting for us to go on looking. And this is why the perfectedness of the digital image is uninteresting for us. It does not resonate with our embodied way of looking at things.
Yes, thank you very much.
Question was just,
Thank you so much. Yeah, fantastic. The one thing is I want to sort of emphasize is when I'm talking about Catherine Hayles, she talked about cognizers. Both we can find the biological world and the computational world. What she's talking about is much more sort of in the system level, which means she thinks machine doesn't react symbolic like we are. But she's talking about sign. Sign is sort of very much sort of machinic sort of entity, right? So therefore, she talked about system and contribution, how it works, mechanism. It's sign is you can find biological as well as computational. But I think you're right. There is a sort of, I'm a sociologist, so therefore I'm really always concerned with politics, economy as well, this context. So you're right, I think. Yes, yeah. And affordance also important concept. Actually, I'm just trying to using this concept to analyzing, this research. But I didn't mention it because I don't want to talk to artists before I start analyzing. But it's really important concept because Gibson's, one of my favorite, yes, and as you like, it's quite useful concept. We are sort of, inevitably living in environment. So therefore, existence is without environment, we cannot exist. We always keep, construct, we always tune with, accommodate with environment. I think you're right. Thank you very much.